So back in 2008, this mysterious paper just pops up online. It's from someone named Satoshi Nakamoto. It's only 9 pages long, but wow. It proposed something absolutely radical, a type of digital money that doesn't need a bank or any central authority. So today, let's break down this foundational document and really get into the elegant solution it came up with for a problem that had stumped computer scientists for decades.
Okay, let's start with a really simple question that gets right to the heart of it. Think about it. When you hand someone a $5 bill, that's it. The deal is done, it's direct. But online, it's never that simple. Every single digital payment you've ever made needs a middleman. So why is that? Why can't we just send money to each other online, the same way we do with cash? Right, so physical cash is totally peer-to-peer. Once you hand it over, the transaction is final. It's non-reversible. But online payments through your bank, your credit card, whatever, they always rely on what's called a trusted third party. And this creates a huge difference. Online transactions are reversible. The middleman can actually undo a payment to handle stuff like disputes and fraud. But that one little feature, well, it creates a whole cascade of other problems.
And this brings us right to the core problem that the white paper zeroes in on. The fundamental weakness of any system that has to be built entirely on trust.
The paper points out that relying on these middlemen has real costs. They have to mediate disputes, which adds fees to every transaction and makes tiny payments like, say, tipping someone 50 cents online, basically impossible. Merchants have to get all this sensitive data from you just to protect themselves, and everybody just kind of accepts that a certain amount of fraud is going to happen. It's a system that's just full of friction, and the paper argues, hey, there's got to be a better way.
And this is the paper's big, radical idea. What if, instead of trying to build a better system of trust, we could just remove trust from the equation completely? What if we could build a system that relies not on some company's promise, but on pure, cold, hard, verifiable mathematical proof? A system where you and I could transact directly, securely, with absolutely no one in between. So that leads us to the solution. How do you actually build this new kind of digital cash? Well, it all starts with completely redefining what a coin even is. See, in this new system, a coin isn't some file on your computer you can copy and paste. No, it's something way more elegant. A coin is simply the record of its own history. Each one is defined as a chain of digital signatures. You can think of them as unforgeable sign-offs that show every single time it is moved from one owner to the next. So here's how it actually works. To spend a coin, you take its entire history, you add the public key of the person you're paying, which is kind of like their account number, and then you digitally sign the whole thing. This new chunk of info just gets added to the end of the chain. And the new owner, they can look at that entire unbroken chain of signatures and mathematically prove that you and everyone before you were the legit owners. But this creates a huge digital problem. I can prove you owned the coin, sure, but how can I prove you didn't just send that exact same coin to someone else 5 minutes before you sent it to me? This is the famous double spending problem, and it's the absolute central challenge for any digital currency.
So how did the paper solve this puzzle without a central bank keeping track of everything? Well, this right here is the absolute genius of the entire system. The logic is actually simple, but it's really powerful. The only way to know for sure that a coin wasn't spent somewhere else is to be aware of all transactions everywhere. So to do this without a central party, the paper proposes something wild. All transactions have to be publicly broadcast to a shared network for everyone to see.
But just announcing transactions isn't quite enough. Imagine I send a transaction, and you send a conflicting one at the exact same moment. Which one is the real one? The network needs a way for everyone, all these computers all around the world, to agree on a single official history of events in the exact right order.
And this is the paper's brilliant solution. The whole network of peers acts like one giant decentralized timestamping service. It bundles all these transactions into blocks, creating a public record. And to secure that record and decide the official order of events, it uses a concept called proof of work, basically a really hard computational puzzle that proves real-world work was done to create each block.
So we have the core ideas down. But how does this network of computers, scattered all across the globe, actually operate and agree on anything in the real world second by second? Well, the system cleverly gets around the problem of one person, one vote, because that's super easy to cheat online. Instead, it uses a whole new model: one CPU, one vote. Your influence on the network is directly tied to how much computing power you contribute. This makes it incredibly hard for any one person or group to just take over. So, how does the network vote? It's actually pretty simple. The nodes, the computers, they vote just by building on top of the chain of transactions they believe is the right one. So over time, the chain that has the most computational work poured into it, the most proof of work, becomes the longest chain, and that's the one everyone agrees is the one true history.
Let's just walk through it real quick. New payments get broadcast out to everyone on the network. Computers or nodes gather up these transactions into a block, and they start racing to solve that proof of work puzzle. The first one to solve it gets to broadcast their new block to everyone else. The other nodes check the work, and if it's all good, they accept it and immediately start working on the next block, chaining it to the one they just got. And that's the blockchain being built in real time.
Okay, this brings us to two final but really critical questions. First off, why would anyone even bother dedicating all their computer's power to doing this? And second, just how secure is this whole chain of blocks, really?
The paper builds the incentive right into the system. The computer that successfully solves the puzzle for a block gets rewarded in two ways. First, they get to create brand new coins for themselves, just out of thin air. And second, they get to collect all the transaction fees that were included in that block. Pretty good deal, right? And the paper itself uses a great analogy for this. All that electricity and CPU time being spent to create new coins, it's intentionally designed to be just like gold miners spending real-world resources to pull gold out of the ground. And that, of course, is exactly where we get the term mining from.
So how secure is this thing? Well, an attacker can't just invent fake money. The network's rules would just reject it. Their only real shot is to try and reverse one of their own payments by secretly building a longer alternate chain. But the math is just brutally stacked against them. If an attacker has, say, 10% of the network's power, once their transaction is buried under just 6 new blocks, we call those confirmations, their chance of ever catching up and rewriting history drops to a teeny-tiny 0.024%.
And this is the key thing to understand about the security here. It's not absolute in the first second. Instead, it gets exponentially stronger over time. That 6 confirmations rule became a famous standard. After about an hour or so, a transaction is buried so deep in that chain of proof of work that it becomes, for all practical purposes, completely irreversible, set in stone. And that really brings us to the paper's own powerful conclusion. It starts with this simple idea of digital signatures, and from there it lays out this complete system to prevent double spending, all using a peer-to-peer network, proof of work, and built-in incentives. It actually achieved its goal, a system for electronic cash that truly doesn't need to rely on trust. The paper pretty much ends right there, but it leaves us with this profound question that honestly echoes even louder today. We've just seen how a system for money can be totally redesigned to replace trust with cryptographic proof. So, what happens when that idea starts to spread? What does our digital world look like when it's built not on trusting other people or companies, but on verifiable mathematical proof?